On the morning of December 18th, 1944, inside a cold stone building in Versailles, France, the mood at Allied headquarters was tense and heavy. Maps covered the walls, phones rang without pause, and officers spoke in low voices. Just 2 days earlier, the German army had launched a massive surprise attack through the Ardennes Forest. Now a deep bulge was ripping into the Allied lines. Supplies were cut, units were surrounded, and confusion was spreading fast. Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower stood quietly, listening to reports that kept getting worse by the hour. Then he looked at one name on the map, far to the south, Third Army, commanded by Lieutenant General George S. Patton. And Eisenhower asked a simple question that would change the course of the Battle of the Bulge. How fast can Patton turn his army north? If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below. To understand why that question mattered so much, we need to step back a few weeks. By late November 1944, most Allied commanders believed the war in Europe was entering its final stage. Paris had been liberated in August. Brussels had fallen in September. German forces were retreating on nearly every front. Many Allied units were exhausted and under strength, but morale was high. Commanders expected a slow winter with limited fighting. The Ardennes Forest, thick with trees, narrow roads and steep hills, was considered unsuitable for large-scale armoured operations. It was guarded by tired divisions and new replacements. That decision would soon prove costly. Adolf Hitler saw the Ardennes differently. He believed one last massive strike could still change the war. His plan was bold and reckless. He would smash through the Ardennes, cross the Meuse River, capture Antwerp, and split the British and American armies apart. Fuel shortages, weak air support, and thin reserves did not stop him. He ordered the attack anyway. German commanders had doubts, but orders were orders. Secrecy was strict. Troops moved at night. Radio silence was enforced. Before dawn on December 16, 1944, German artillery opened fire along an 85-mile front. Thousands of shells crashed into American positions. Infantry followed closely behind. Tanks emerged from the fog. The weather worked in Germany's favour. Thick clouds grounded Allied aircraft, removing one of their greatest advantages. American units were caught off guard. Communication lines failed. Command posts were overrun. Some soldiers fought bravely, but were pushed back by sheer force. By December 17th, reports flooded into Allied headquarters. The situation was far worse than first believed. Entire units were surrounded. Roads were clogged with refugees and retreating troops. German spearheads were advancing fast toward key towns like St. Vith and Bastogne. Eisenhower realized this was the largest German offensive since Normandy. He knew that hesitation could be fatal. Eisenhower's leadership style was calm and steady, even under pressure. He gathered information, listened carefully, and focused on solutions. His priority was clear. He needed to stop the German advance and restore a solid front. To do that, he needed mobile forces that could strike quickly. He looked at his reserves. Most were already engaged. Only one major force had the strength and flexibility to act immediately: Patton's Third Army. At that moment, Third Army was positioned in eastern France, pushing toward the German Saar. Patton had been aggressive in that sector, pressing German defences and keeping pressure on the enemy. His army was spread across a wide front facing east. Turning it north would be a massive undertaking. It would require speed, coordination, and absolute control. On December 18th, Eisenhower called a conference in Verdun. The room was filled with senior officers. Maps showed the growing bulge in the Allied line. Eisenhower explained the situation in direct terms. The German attack had to be stopped. Bastogne had to be relieved. The enemy's flank had to be hit hard. Then Eisenhower turned to Patton and asked when Third Army could attack north. Patton answered without hesitation: 48 hours. The room fell silent. Some officers exchanged glances, others shook their heads slightly. Turning an entire army usually took far longer. Eisenhower pressed Patton, asking if he understood the scale of the movement. Patton replied that he did. He explained that his staff had already prepared plans for such a move weeks earlier. He had ordered them to think ahead, to expect surprises, and to be ready. Eisenhower later told his staff that Patton's response stood out because it showed confidence backed by preparation. Eisenhower believed that leadership in war meant being ready before the crisis arrived. Patton had done exactly that. Eisenhower approved the plan. He gave Patton the green light to pivot north and strike the German flank. When Patton returned to his headquarters in Nancy on December 18th, there was no celebration. There was only work. Orders went out immediately. Corps commanders were instructed to disengage and move. Engineers were told to prepare roads and bridges. Supply officers rerouted fuel and ammunition. Military police were assigned to control traffic and prevent gridlock. Every hour mattered. The weather made everything harder. Snow covered the roads. Ice made driving dangerous. Vehicles broke down in the cold. Soldiers marched with frozen boots and stiff fingers. But movement continued day and night. Patton demanded speed but also discipline. He warned commanders that delays would cost lives. He reminded them that soldiers in Bastogne were counting on them. Patton personally monitored progress, often visiting command posts and road junctions. He was known for his sharp language and high expectations, but during these days he was focused and determined. He trusted his subordinates and pushed them hard. His staff worked around the clock, updating maps and tracking unit positions. While Third Army moved north, the situation inside Bastogne grew more desperate. The town was a critical road hub. Whoever controlled Bastogne controlled movement across the Ardennes. The 101st Airborne Division, under Major General Maxwell Taylor, was rushed in to defend it, though Taylor himself was away. Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe took command on the ground. German forces quickly surrounded the town. Supplies in Bastogne were dangerously low. Medical supplies ran out first. Wounded soldiers lay in freezing conditions. Food and ammunition were rationed. German artillery shelled the town constantly. On December 22nd, German officers approached the American lines and demanded surrender. McAuliffe's response, "Nuts," became legendary, but at the time the situation was far from humorous. That same day, Patton's lead elements were fighting their way north. The 4th Armoured Division faced strong resistance. German units were well positioned and determined. Progress was measured in yards, not miles. Patton urged his commanders to keep pushing, reminding them that speed was still essential. On December 26, 1944, after days of hard fighting, tanks from the 37th Tank Battalion finally broke through to Bastogne. The moment was emotional. Soldiers shook hands. Supplies began to flow in. The siege was lifted, though fighting continued around the town. Patton had delivered on his promise. Eisenhower was informed almost immediately. He understood the significance of the moment. The German offensive had lost its momentum. Allied morale surged. The initiative was shifting. Eisenhower later remarked that Patton's maneuver was a textbook example of operational flexibility under pressure. The Battle of the Bulge continued into January 1945. Fighting remained brutal. Cold, exhaustion, and constant combat took a heavy toll. But the German army had spent its last major reserves. Fuel shortages crippled their tanks. Allied air power returned when the weather cleared. Step by step, the Bulge was pushed back. In later discussions with his staff, Eisenhower emphasized the lessons of those days. He said that Patton's success was not the result of recklessness, but of planning, discipline, and leadership. Eisenhower reminded his officers that war rarely follows expectations. Victory belongs to those who prepare for the unexpected. Patton's 90-degree turn became one of the most studied maneuvers of World War II. Military schools analyzed it. Historians wrote about it. But for Eisenhower, It was a reminder of why trust between commanders mattered. He trusted Patton to act, and Patton justified that trust. What Eisenhower told his staff after the crisis was simple and clear. He said that when the situation is darkest, you must rely on leaders who can think ahead and move fast. You cannot wait for perfect conditions. You act with what you have, where you are, and when you must. In December 1944, that mindset helped save Bastogne, break the German offensive, and shorten the war in Europe. And it all began with one question, asked at the right moment, and one commander who was ready with an answer. That is the full story of what Eisenhower told his staff when Patton turned his army 90 degrees in 48 hours. A moment when preparation met crisis and history changed course. If you want more content like this, subscribe now and comment below.